I can still hear the sound of that envelope sliding across my desk. It was quiet. Too quiet. Like the room itself knew something was about to break. I picked it up without thinking at first. Just another stack of documents, I thought. Maybe a client contract. Maybe a bill. But when I saw her handwriting on the front, clean, careful, familiar, my stomach tightened before my mind even understood why. I opened it. And everything inside me dropped. Divorce papers. No warning. No conversation. Not even a moment to sit down and say, we need to talk. Just a cold signature and a request for half of everything I had worked my entire life to build. My name is Mark Turner. And that morning felt like someone had taken a hammer to my chest. For 15 years, I gave everything to my business: late nights, weekends, missed birthdays, the constant pressure of keeping the lights on. And standing beside me through most of that was Emily, my wife, my partner. Or at least, that's who I believed she was. But in one moment, in one envelope, she became someone I didn't recognize at all. I remember gripping the papers so tight my hands shook. Shock at first. Then disbelief. And right behind it, something deeper. A heavy, sharp sense of betrayal that made it hard to breathe. Half. She wanted half of the company. Half of the thing I built from nothing. Half of the dream I nearly broke myself trying to create. And maybe, that should have been the whole story. Divorce happens. People grow apart. Assets split, but this was only the beginning. Because what Emily didn't know, what she never saw coming, was that her taking half would become the reason I rose higher than ever. Her decision, that moment meant to tear my life in two, would end up pushing me toward a future where I didn't just rebuild. I would own the rest of the business not once, but twice. I didn't know that then, though. All I knew was the sinking feeling in my chest, the sound of papers rustling in my shaking hands, and the burning question echoing in my mind. Why didn't she tell me? Why wasn't I worth a conversation? How did we go from partners to this? I stared out the office window, watching cars roll by. People laughing on the sidewalk, everyone living their normal lives, while mine felt like it had been split down the middle. That day, that moment, was the exact point where two versions of me separated. The man who thought everything was stable, and the man who learned that betrayal doesn't always shout. Sometimes it arrives in a plain white envelope. But here's the thing. Sometimes life has a twist waiting. And the twist in my story? She may have taken half my business that day. But in the end, I would find a way to own the other half twice. And that journey started right here. With those papers in my hands, and a life that had just shattered in two. If I'm being honest, the story didn't start with betrayal. It started with hope. Real hope, the kind you feel in your chest. The kind that makes you believe life is finally giving you a break. I met Emily on a warm spring afternoon in Austin, Texas. I remember the exact moment because she walked into the little coffee shop like she carried her own sunlight. I was sitting there with my old laptop, trying to fix a server issue for a client who barely paid on time. She ordered a chai latte, looked around, and somehow ended up asking if she could sit at my table. I didn't know it then. But that moment would change my whole world. I was still building my tech service company back then. Nothing big, just a small operation, helping local businesses with security systems, cloud setups, and troubleshooting. Most nights, I worked until my eyes burned. Most weekends, I was fixing problems instead of relaxing. There were days the bank account dipped so low, I wondered if I was dreaming too big. But every time I talked to Emily, she made me feel like the struggles were worth something. She listened. She encouraged me. She told me she believed in people who built things from the ground up. We dated for a year before getting married. Back then, we didn't have much an apartment with loud neighbors, one car that needed a new transmission, and a future that looked more like a blurry sketch than a plan. But we were in it together. At least that's what I thought. My business grew slowly. One client told another, I took every job I could, sometimes working 18-hour days just to keep things going. I missed birthdays, family dinners, and more sleep than I could count. But every time I came home, Emily was there with a smile. She would ask about my day, make dinner, or just sit with me while I tried to keep my eyes open. Life started to get better. We moved into a nicer place, bought a second car, took weekend trips to the coast. I felt proud of what we built, proud of our life, proud that all the long nights were finally paying off. But as the business grew, something else grew too. Something I didn't pay enough attention to. It wasn't loud or obvious. It wasn't a fight or a complaint. It was small things at first. Comments from her about how I spent too much time working. Little sighs when I got a late-night call. A strange coldness when I celebrated landing a big client. Almost like the success made her uneasy instead of excited. I brushed it off. Told myself it was stress or life or just a phase. But looking back now, that was the first shift. The first tiny crack in something I thought was solid. I didn't know then that the woman who once cheered for me would someday walk into a lawyer's office and decide she deserved half of everything I bled for. If only I had noticed the change sooner. If only I had asked the hard questions. Maybe the story would have turned out different. But that's the thing about cracks, they grow quietly until one day the whole thing breaks. There's a moment in every story where things stop feeling right, where the air changes. The smiles fade, and you can't put your finger on why. For me, that moment came slowly, like a dimmer switch sliding down week by week. It started with little things. Emily stopped asking about my day. Stopped sitting with me at dinner. Stopped laughing at the jokes she used to love. Instead, I got short answers, tight smiles, and a quiet distance that felt colder than winter. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I was working too much. Maybe she felt lonely. Maybe we just needed a vacation or a long talk. But whenever I tried to ask what was wrong, she brushed it off. Nothing. I'm fine. Except she wasn't fine, and deep down, I knew our marriage was shifting into something I didn't recognize. The criticism came next. Comments about how I wasn't home enough. How I cared more about clients than her. How the business was taking over everything. It hurt, because the business wasn't just mine, it was supposed to be ours. Something that gave us a better life, not something she'd resent. The tension grew. Conversations felt heavy, like we were walking on glass. I'd come home late after a long shift, and she wouldn't even look up from her phone. The warmth that once filled our home was gone. And then one morning, everything broke. I walked into my office, coffee in hand, ready to start another long day. My assistant handed me an envelope with a strange look on her face. I didn't think much of it until I opened it. Divorce papers. Just like that. No warning. No talk. No last attempt to fix things. My hands shook as I read her demands. Emily wasn't just leaving me. She was claiming half of the business under Texas law. Half of everything I built. Half of the company I started when I had nothing but an old laptop and a dream. Half of the years I spent grinding late into the night, while she slept peacefully upstairs. It felt like the ground opened beneath me. I remember sinking into my chair, staring at the wall, wondering how the woman I loved could do something so cold. So sudden, so calculated. But the shock didn't end there. Over the next few days, I noticed something strange. Her lawyer kept sending additional requests, documents I had already provided, questions that made no sense. It felt like they were searching for something. Something more than just a fair split. And that's when the first hint hit me. Half wasn't enough for her. Not anymore. She wanted control, influence, leverage over my company, and my future. It was the beginning of a storm I didn't see coming. A storm that would push me to my lowest point and set the stage for a revenge she never expected. Because some people don't just want their share, they want the power to decide how your story ends. But I wasn't about to let her write mine. I used to think divorce was just paperwork and heartbreak. But with Emily, it became something else. Something colder. Something calculated. Something that felt like a quiet war being fought behind closed doors. It started only a week after I received the papers. At first, it was the constant emails from her lawyer, requests for documents I had already sent, questions that didn't make sense, demands that felt more like traps than legal steps. Every morning, I'd open my inbox and feel my stomach twist. It was like being worn down grain by grain, until I couldn't tell if I was running a business or surviving an attack, disguised as legal procedure. But then it got worse. One of my longtime clients called me out of nowhere. He sounded uneasy. "Hey Mark, I got a message from someone named Emily Turner. She said there might be some changes coming. Something about a transition?" My heart dropped. Emily had reached out to my clients. Not directly accusing me of anything, she was too smart for that, but planting little seeds of doubt, questions, whispers, just enough to make them wonder if the business was unstable. And in our line of work, uncertainty is poison. Within days, 2 more clients reached out with similar concerns. Then one of my employees pulled me aside with worry in her eyes. "I heard something," she whispered. "Someone said the company might go through ownership changes. Is that true?" I felt the air leave my lungs. Emily hadn't stepped foot in the company for years. She never handled clients, never talked to employees, never sat in on meetings. But now, she was using her new status as a soon-to-be co-owner like a sharp tool, poking holes wherever she could. It wasn't loud sabotage. It wasn't messy. It was quiet, clever, precise. The kind of interference that doesn't break a company overnight, but weakens it little by little. And then came the moment that changed everything. My business partner, Tom, walked into my office looking serious, the kind of serious that makes the room feel colder. "Mark," he said, "you need to hear this. Derek Shaw reached out to me." I froze. Derek Shaw, my biggest rival in the entire Austin tech service industry. A man who hated losing clients to me. Someone who once tried to recruit my top tech just to mess with my operations. A competitor who would love nothing more than to shut down my company for good. What did he want? I asked, already afraid of the answer. Tom swallowed. He said he's been talking to Emily. That single sentence hit harder than the divorce papers ever did. Emily. Talking to Derek? Why? What were they discussing? What was she planning? In that moment, a truth settled heavy in my chest. This wasn't about fairness anymore. This wasn't about a simple split. Emily wasn't just leaving me. She was aligning herself with the one man who had the most to gain from watching my business fall apart. And that's when I realized she wasn't taking half because she needed it. She was taking half so she could use it. The war had started quietly, but I could feel a bigger storm gathering just behind the horizon. Some betrayals arrive quietly. This one landed like a punch I never saw coming. I still remember the exact moment I learned the truth. It was late afternoon, and the sun outside my office window was fading into that deep orange you only see in Austin. I was exhausted, emotionally drained from weeks of tension, and hoping, just for a moment, things might settle down. Then my phone rang. It was one of my oldest clients. A man who'd been with me since the days I was fixing routers out of the back of my old Honda. He spoke softly, like he wasn't sure he should be telling me this. "Mark, I heard something, and you need to know. Emily's been talking to Derek Shaw." For a second, I thought I misheard him. "Derek? My competitor Derek?" He hesitated. "She's trying to sell her half of the company." To him, the room felt like it tilted. My heart dropped so fast I actually had to sit down. Emily. Selling her half. To Derek Shaw? The man who had tried for years to outbid me, undercut me, and push me out of every major contract in the city. It wasn't just a sale. It was an ambush. A slow, strategic attempt to let the one person who wanted to shut me down gain access to everything I built. And suddenly, it hit me. This wasn't just divorce. This wasn't about fairness or a clean break. This was an attempted takeover. A move to break my business, weaken my future, and leave me with nothing but dust. I couldn't breathe for a moment. I stared at the wall like it could give me answers. All the late nights, all the sacrifices, all the times I'd worked until I nearly passed out. And now the woman who once promised to stand by me was quietly planning to hand half my company to the one person guaranteed to use it against me. That night, I stayed in the office long after everyone left. The building was silent, lights low. Just me, the hum of the AC, and the crushing realization that the person I trusted most had aligned herself with the person who wanted to destroy everything I had built. I felt defeated. Truly defeated. Like the floor had opened under my feet, and there was no way back up. But here's the strange thing about hitting rock bottom. Sometimes it clears your mind. You stop thinking emotionally. You stop reacting. You start planning. I stared out the window into the empty parking lot, and something inside me shifted. Not anger. Not rage. Something sharper. Cleaner. I realized Emily wasn't expecting me to fight back. Not cleverly, at least. She thought I'd panic, lash out, crumble under pressure. But she didn't know the part of me that built a business from nothing. The part of me that survived failure after failure and still kept going. If she wanted a war, she had chosen the wrong man to underestimate. Right there. In that silent office, I made the decision. I wouldn't fight with emotions. I'd fight with strategy. I'd fight smart. And the revenge she never saw coming started that very night. When you're pushed into a corner, you either break or you start thinking differently. And that night, sitting alone in my office with the lights low and my heart heavy, I realized something important. If Emily wanted to use the business as leverage, then I needed to make sure the business she wanted to control wasn't the one holding my future. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't send a single angry message. Instead, I got to work. The next morning, before sunrise, I met with my partner Tom in a small diner off Highway 183. The place was half empty, the coffee weak. But it didn't matter. What we planned there would change everything. "Tom," I said quietly, "I'm starting a new company." He stared at me like I'd just flipped the table. New company?" "Mark, the old one." "I know," I said. "But if Emily sells her half to Derek, he'll have a say in every decision we make. He'll stall us, block us, maybe even shut us down. I can't let that happen." And slowly, he nodded. Because he saw what I saw. The old company was no longer safe. So we did something bold. Something Emily would never expect. I formed a brand new entity, new name, new branding, new contracts. A clean slate. Everything was completely legal, structured through lawyers, accountants, and business consultants who helped me make sure every move was above board. I didn't take clients from the old company. I simply gave them a choice. One by one, I called my biggest clients personally. I told them, "I'm shifting to a new brand with better support and better systems. You're welcome to join me if you'd like, but there's no pressure." But here's the thing. People don't stay because of a logo. They stay because of trust, because of relationships, because of results. And I had earned that over years. Within 3 weeks, nearly half my clients moved to the new company. Within 6 weeks, more followed. By the end of the second month, over 80% of our revenue had shifted into the new business, my new business. I watched it all happen with a calm I didn't even recognize in myself. Meanwhile, the old company, the one Emily wanted half of, began to struggle. Not because of sabotage, not because of pettiness, simply because the heart of the business, the service and leadership, had moved elsewhere. Then, the email started. Short messages from Emily, questions, concerns, worries, wrapped in polite sentences. Why are the numbers dropping? What's going on with revenue? Clients are saying things feel different. For the first time since the divorce began, she seemed uncertain, shaken, and quietly, without raising my voice, without breaking a single rule. The power shifted. She had tried to use my business against me. But in the end, I built a new one she couldn't touch. She wanted half of the old company. But she never imagined the old company would become the part that no longer mattered. And this was only the beginning of the twist she never saw coming. There's a strange moment in every battle when the pressure suddenly flips. When the person who pushed you down starts to realize they might have pushed too hard. For me, that moment came on a quiet Tuesday morning. I was sitting in my new office, smaller, simpler, but filled with a feeling I hadn't felt in months: peace. The new company was steady, clients were happy, and the team felt stronger than ever. Then my phone buzzed with an email from Emily's lawyer. Except this time, it wasn't a demand, not a threat, not a list of documents. It was a single line. We'd like to discuss the current value of my client's ownership. That was it. No confidence, no pressure, just concern masked behind formal language. And I knew right then, they finally understood. The old company, the one she fought so hard to take half of, wasn't worth nearly what she imagined. The revenue wasn't coming in like before. Clients weren't calling. The energy, the momentum, the heartbeat of the business, it was gone, because it wasn't the building or the name that made the company thrive. It was me, my work, my vision, my relationships, and she had never valued that part. Over the next week, her lawyer's tone softened completely. Emails became friendly, almost nervous. Then, one night around 9 p.m., my phone lit up with a message from Emily herself. Her name on my screen made my heart jump in a way I didn't like. I opened it slowly. "Mark, can we talk about my share? I think we should settle this quickly." Quickly. That word said everything. She wasn't confident anymore. She wasn't demanding. She wasn't in control. She wanted out. The next day, we met through lawyers, of course, to discuss a buyout. The look on her face said more than her words ever could. She wasn't angry. She wasn't triumphant. She looked worried, like she finally understood the weight of the decisions she made. The valuation team laid out the numbers, clean, honest, cold. Her half, once worth a small fortune during the height of our success, was worth a fraction now. Not because I cheated her, not because I hid anything, but because the business she wanted half of no longer carried the life it once had, and she knew it. She hesitated for a moment, an expression between shock and acceptance crossing her face. And then she signed, just like that. The half she fought to claim, I bought for pennies compared to what she once expected. I stayed calm through it all. No gloating, no bitterness, no anger. Because revenge doesn't always come from striking back. Sometimes it comes from staying steady while the truth reveals itself. And in that moment, as she handed over her share, I realized something powerful. She took half my business in the divorce. But now I owned the rest, for far less than she ever imagined. And the story wasn't finished yet. Not even close. The day I signed the final ballot papers, something strange happened. I didn't feel excitement. I didn't feel victory. I felt calm. A deep, steady calm I hadn't felt since before the divorce even started. Emily's half was officially mine, legally, cleanly, no drama, no shouting. Just a quiet signature and a weight lifting off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I walked out of that building feeling like I could breathe again. But the story didn't end there. Not even close. Because a week later, Tom, my longtime business partner, called me into his office. He closed the door behind us, let out a long breath, and said, "Mark, I think it's time I step back. And if anyone should own my half, it's you." I just stared at him. Shock, confusion, and relief all mixing together in a single moment. "Tom, are you sure?" I asked. He nodded. "You've carried this company for years. You rebuilt everything after the divorce. You're the heart of this place, man. And honestly, I trust you more than I trust the old structure." And with that, a second door opened, what I never expected. Within a month, I bought Tom's half as well. Fair price. No pressure. Just mutual respect and years of partnership coming to a natural close. And suddenly, I owned both halves. The half Emily fought for so fiercely. And the half Tom had built beside me. I didn't just regain control. I gained full ownership twice over. It felt surreal. Like every piece of the storm I had walked through had somehow guided me back to something stronger than before. Now, with full control, I made a choice that surprised even me. I folded the old company into the new one, quietly, smoothly. No drama. The old business, the one that had been a battlefield during the divorce, was no longer a burden. It became part of a bigger picture, a larger plan that actually made sense. The new company? It was thriving, growing faster than anything I had ever built before. Clients loved the fresh branding. Employees appreciated the stability. The systems ran cleaner, smoother, better. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't climbing uphill anymore. I was finally moving forward. Sometimes I'd sit in my office late at night, looking at the numbers, the emails, the client reviews, and I'd think about everything that had happened, how I went from nearly losing everything to building something even greater, how the business she once tried to use against me ended up becoming my greatest victory. And the truth settled quietly inside me. She took half my business in the divorce, but that loss pushed me to create something new. Something stronger, something entirely mine. In the end, I didn't just get my company back. I owned the other half twice. And the future finally felt like it belonged to me again. I didn't plan to see Emily again. Honestly, I thought our story had ended the moment she signed those papers. Clean break. Closed chapter. A quiet goodbye without the actual words. But life has a strange sense of timing. It happened at a mutual friends gathering, a simple backyard cookout on a warm Austin evening. I went because I needed a night that wasn't about business, lawyers, or rebuilding. Just people, food, and maybe a moment to breathe. I didn't know she'd be there. I had just picked up a plate when I saw her across the yard. For a second, everything inside me froze. Not from fear, but from the unexpected weight of seeing someone who used to mean everything. She looked different. Not physically, but in the way someone looks when life has humbled them a little. Like the shine was still there, but softer. Our eyes met. And instead of looking away, she walked toward me. "Hi, Mark," she said quietly. "Hey," I replied, steady and calm. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Just silence between two people who had once shared a whole life. Finally, she sighed. I didn't expect things to turn out like this. Her voice wasn't sharp anymore. No anger, no pride. Just a kind of tired honesty. I nodded. Neither did I. She looked down, unsure, before adding, "I thought. I don't know. I thought holding onto my share would give me some kind of power. Or at least some kind of security. I didn't realize how much you were carrying on your own. I guess I didn't see the whole picture." For a moment, I felt something. Not pain, not anger. Just a quiet sadness for what could have been. "I'm not angry anymore," I said softly. And I meant it, truly. Her eyes lifted, surprised. "Really?" "Yeah," I said. "We both made choices. Some good, some bad. But we survived it. And honestly, I grew from it. More than I ever expected." She took a slow breath, almost like she'd been holding it for months. I'm glad things worked out for you, really. I heard your new company is doing well. It is, I replied. Better than I imagined. She smiled a small, honest smile, the kind I hadn't seen in years. I guess you proved me wrong, she said softly. I shook my head. It's not about proving anything, Emily. Sometimes life breaks so it can rebuild in a better shape. For the first time in a long time, the space between us didn't feel heavy. Just peaceful. Two people who had lived a story, learned from it, and moved on. We said our goodbyes without sadness or drama. She walked one way, and I walked another, not as enemies, not as exes still stuck in the past, but as two people finally free from the weight of what happened. And that was the last conversation we ever had. No bitterness. No regret. Just closure. The kind that lets you breathe, move forward, and finally leave the past exactly where it belongs. If you had told me years ago that losing half my business, half my life, and half my heart would lead to something better, I would have laughed. Back then, all I felt was the weight of everything falling apart. But now I can say this honestly. Sometimes life has to break you, so it can rebuild you into someone stronger. When the divorce started, I wanted to shout. I wanted to defend myself, argue, push back, prove I was right and she was wrong. But anger doesn't build anything. Anger only destroys. What saved me wasn't rage, it was strategy. It was patience. It was choosing to respond with clarity instead of emotion. I learned that true revenge isn't about hurting someone who hurt you. Real revenge is rising so high that their actions can't touch you anymore. It's rebuilding in a way that makes people stop and say, wow, he made it through that. When Emily took half my business, I thought it was the end. But losing that half forced me to create something even better. Something cleaner. Something that reflected who I had grown into. The new company didn't just save me, it changed me. It reminded me that I had built everything once before, and I could build it again. With more wisdom, more strength, and more understanding. I also learned something about integrity. You can win through shortcuts. You can win through anger. You can win through fighting back with the same energy someone throws at you. But that victory won't feel clean. It won't feel honest. And it won't give you peace. I chose to win differently, quietly, strategically, without shouting, without bitterness, without lowering myself. And that choice gave me something more valuable than money or ownership. It gave me myself back. To anyone listening who's going through heartbreak, betrayal, or loss, whether it's a relationship, a business, or something deeply personal, I want you to remember this. You are not done. What feels like the end may be the moment life is clearing space for something better. Sometimes people leave so new opportunities can enter. Sometimes things break so you can rebuild them stronger. Sometimes losing your old world is the only way to step into a new one. You don't have to strike back with anger. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You only have to stay steady, stay sharp, and trust that your future isn't defined by the person who tried to break you. It's defined by the person you decide to become next. That's the real victory. That's the quiet justice life gives to those who keep going. Because in the end, she took half my business, but losing that half pushed me to build a future twice as strong. And sometimes, the greatest revenge is simply becoming someone they can never shake again. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that even after betrayal, you can rise again, then stay with us. Hit subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts below. Your support helps others find their strength too. This isn't just a channel. It's a place for comebacks,